Can you guys introduce Mommy?
Spill the beans with Dr. Jill.
So, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Spill the Beans with Dr. Jill. This isn't going to be an interesting episode because this individual has actually known me the longest of everyone I've recorded with so far. So that's how long we've known each other is a very long time, but I would love for them to introduce themselves.
Hi, good day. My name's Dan Harayda. I work at the Massachusetts School of Law. I am a professor there and also the director of the library. As Jill said, I think I've known her over 20 years,
Yeah.
maybe close to 25. It's got to
Yeah.
be close to that. Um, let's see. I have a master's degree in library science and political science. I also have a law degree from the law school I'm at. I'm admitted to the Supreme Court. I am on the National Paralegal Society committee. I try to set up standards for that, and I'm always interested in trying to help students and faculty achieve what they can, especially students. I like to see students do their best.
I love it. What do your students, faculty, and staff refer to you as?
Dan. Dan.
Dan?
Some people used to call me CB, but it's Dan. I lean more toward Dan. So
Yeah.
my closest of friends would call me Danny Boy, but I go by anything. You can call me anything you like. I'm a very laid back individual.
Yeah, I'm the formalities I don't typically have
Mm.
to enact unless I
Mhm.
am talking to a lawyer. And then I
Yep.
like to be very proper,
Yep.
just so that they understand like they're typically not one-upping me and that we are equals and all that kinds of fun stuff. But one of the reasons why I wanted to ask you
Mhm.
is because not only have you known me the longest and you have a higher ed background, but with your law degree, I was curious to know if when you were going to school, did anyone ever talk to you about the vicarious trauma or the impact when you're working with clients? Was that part of the curriculum?
I'm gonna say the answer was probably a little bit at the end.
Hmm.
Um, Lawyers, I did a little research here, get ready for this because I didn't want to, I wanted to give you the best show because I know you are. I wanted to give you a good show because I appreciate all your hard work throughout the years, and I've been, your dissertation was really good.
Think.
Um, you know, um, we initially talked about the hours. Lawyers have to work a lot of hours. Back even 20 years ago beforehand, it was a lot worse. You used to call them the golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
Is that you have something called billable hours. So it's just not working hours. You got to be able to bill people. So it used to be a minimum of 2,000. Now that's not even the big firms. That's just like minimum firms. So that's
Hmm.
50 hours a week billable. So that's not like driving to work or anything. That's just a client. Um, I think then at the end we started talking about lawyers helping lawyers in Massachusetts. Lawyers have a very high alcoholism rate, more than double doctors. So I'm just gonna got this. I wanted to write this down. I want to make this correct. Over 20% abuse alcohol.
Hmm.
30% feel they drink too much.
Hmm.
Again, that's 12% for doctors. 9 to 10% abuse prescription medicine,
Hmm.
and at least 10%, the studies are low there, abuse illegal narcotics. Now, I'm not sure if that considers marijuana or not because the studies are a little older or not. I'm going
Hmm.
to say probably not. I don't think people really abuse marijuana. Like they don't think of it that way.
Right.
But so I'm taking that out. Necessarily taking that out. So um, 46% have depression at some point in their career, and over 60 have anxiety issues as lawyers. And I think a lot of that comes from dealing with our clients, and work. I think it's part of the work. I think it's also dealing with that because you sort of bond to your clients. You want to help them, right? And can't win every case, unfortunately. You
Right.
try to do your best, and you go with it. But when you see those numbers, you just that you know what you get into to a certain extent. But then when you really get in, start practicing, you find out it really is the game is a lot harder. It's not like really what you see on TV. It is much, much, much more complicated.
So, one of the things I talk about in my workshops and when I'm working with individuals is this idea of renaming happy hour. I
Hmm.
like to call it social hour
Hmm.
to take away that pressure of partaking in those behaviors and setting expectations of like the introverts as well of like this is what like this is time to be social. So if you don't want to be social, then don't come. But it also gives some flexibility for those that are, sober and relieves pressure from those that are less junior to be able to say, I don't feel comfortable drinking in this environment, right?
That's great.
Um, what are there other practices that you've seen that have worked? Because I see a lot of, the support is I'll
Mhm.
meet you at the bar afterwards. Like what has helped you or what have you seen and what do you like to tell your students would be a good behavior?
I always recommend mentorship to find a good attorney who's out there when we try to set mentorships with students if we can with practicing lawyers. Our alumni sort of that in that sense pretty good that way.
Yeah, that's great.
Um, and we try to match up one to one person, see if they can get some advice there. I also believe you got to have a church and state. There has to be a divide. I mean,
Yeah.
if you are you're listening to this, you're probably a hard worker. If you're listening to this, you deserve a break. I tell my students that like look, it could be working out, it could be reading poetry, walking in nature. I like to watch Japanese cartoons. Whatever it is that you find fine, you deserve an hour a day to
Hmm.
get that in there. That can be tough for a lot of people. Life is very hard, especially nowadays. Life balance after COVID sort of switched, and we check our emails now constantly, our phones.
Right.
I mean, um, we take work home with us, the laptop. We're always working. I know, making sure I shut that phone off, and my wife has to sort of remind me sometimes. You know what?
Right.
Why are you working? And you got to make that decision because you also want to
Right.
be there for the students. I mean,
Right.
and faculty, because staff will call me too, like the teacher needs something
Hmm.
or there's a question about this. But I think you need your boundaries. Like I give a good example, if I may.
Yeah.
During COVID, I told students, I gave my cell phone out, and I said, "Look, you can call me anytime you want." And
Mm.
a student called me like 11:30 at night, and I said, "Oh my God, are you okay?
Right.
Are
Right.
you in the hospital?" Like, and they said, "No, you said I could call anytime you wanted." And so ever since then, I said, "Look, you can email me anytime you like, but let's keep the phone calls before 8, unless it's a real emergency."
Right. For sure. Setting those boundaries is really
Yeah.
important. I know that some of my previous speakers talked about that. I'm wondering for you specifically, um, when we talk about the complexities of the cases, there's no type of law that's easier than the other, right? I mean, if you're working with, minors and DCF cases, I it's as hard as dealing with divorce and, family law. And I mean, there's every part of law, there's not an easy law. I don't know how to frame that, but like everyone that I've talked
Yeah.
to, every kind of lawyer, whether it's criminal, whether it's, motor vehicle, like everybody, because it's not about the magnitude of the case, it's about the impact to the person, right?
Absolutely. Think about it. A car accident, right? If
Hmm.
that person's in an accident, and let's say they're out of work 4 to 6 weeks, most people don't have 4 to 6 weeks of money saved. I mean, so
Right,
are they going to be able to make rent? I mean,
right.
so and that's not even a big accident nowadays. I mean, seriously, if you have a car accident, it's a couple $1,000s just to get in the shop. So no, there is no easy law. Everything has pluses and minuses. Let's just say like
Mhm.
tax law. All right. If you don't pay your
Yep,
taxes, you could up to going to jail. Now, usually that's not going to happen. You got some
right.
kind of penalty and stuff, but you're paying high interest rate. Family law divorces can be that might be a little harder because it takes a special type of person to do that
Right.
because the balance sort of you have to really be really balanced, but enough to care enough. It takes
Hmm.
a special type of person. I actually did a few things. I did a little bit of family law, just wasn't for me. It's hard because when you have a lot of emotions, it's there. But if you take commercial business filings, look,
Right,
if you do it incorrectly, someone's business is going out.
right.
Um, my first case, without getting too much detail, I had somebody who got caught at a college, and because there was a daycare center in there. It was classified as a school zone. So
Yeah.
he was looking at, for 4 ounces of marijuana, he was looking at a mandatory 15-year sentence. Um, so even that, you're absolutely right. There is everyone's issue is their issue, and
Right.
we try to do the best we can. And I think Michael Coyne, he's a dean here, but he's a really good friend of mine. He's a mentor of mine, very much. And he said, at our best, we put lives back together, lawyers. And
Mm.
I think that's really what we try to do. I mean, we all have that image of the junkyard dog. You know what I mean? The dog,
Hmm. Hmm.
the but in reality, most lawyers are in small practices, and they're just trying to help people get back to where they were. They're not trying to beat the system or not. They just want to
Hmm.
be made whole again. And when
Yeah.
things work out, that's what we do.
Right. And it's so interesting because when I'm working in the workshop arena, I talk about how the helping profession and law, right? Everyone from lawyers to judges, everyone, that they are called because harm has happened.
Mhm.
And so we need to acknowledge that the helping profession is there to try to help,
Mhm.
but the harm has already occurred,
Right.
right?
Right.
And the other thing that I try to talk about is the liability for these cases that, and I can imagine that if you are a lawyer and you're giving, 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 and you're doing all these billable hours and you're overworking and you're not doing that 1 hour break that you're suggesting, mistakes can happen. And that's not helping the client, the student,
Yeah.
whoever, because then that's going to be a finger pointed the wrong direction and a human error, right?
Oh, absolutely. Look, the more you work, the less mentally sharp you are, and the ideal you're going to make a mistake or you're going to miss a form. Um, some of these forms, like I do some immigration law, some of these forms are 15, 16 pages long with 10 to 20 questions a page, and they're
Right?
very specific. I mean, you have to constantly be thinking about this, and you need to keep yourself fresh. You forget one line, they're going to deny it, and that person is could be in a lot of potential for one minor mistake, one
Right.
typo. Now,
I feel like though our field sometimes is very much like I got to get it done.
yeah.
I want to grind it out. And I'm like, but that's where mistakes can happen, right? And how do we teach people in our field, especially in the law area, to take those breaks as not selfish, but protections?
Well, I think again, I was told, I want your best answer, not your quickest answer. And I think
Yeah, I love that.
yep. So I think it's always good to take a moment, pause, think about things first, and go and remember that I want your best answer. And that might take some time. That might not be a 10-second answer. I know a lot of people like to, especially in the legal field. Um, a lot of lawyers have a high opinion of themselves. The
Mhm.
good ones, the really good ones, will question themselves at time and say, look, let's see what we can do here. And your lawyer job really is to think of the worst case scenario and try to minimize the damage and go from there.
Yeah.
And I think you got to take a few moments yourself, say, okay, this is what we can do. Maybe ask somebody. I look, I've been a lawyer for 20 years. I don't practice all the time, but I know everybody. Everybody asks questions. Like, check my
Mhm.
work. Is this right? Do you think this is a good opinion? Think about it. Judges, right? They're the best, right? They get overturned. They get things wrong, and that's why we have appeals court. So why would you think you're smarter than a judge? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, an editor has an editor. So,
Correct. Right. Exactly.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's what it is. So
right.
don't be afraid to question yourself and say, look, did I do this right? No matter how many times you did it. And along those lines, don't be afraid to give that advice either. I mean, I think sometimes we also get in that field where we don't want to necessarily speak up because we're not 100% sure of ourselves. And I respect that to a certain degree. But
Mhm.
if you think you got an idea, offer the idea, suggestion, and see
Yeah,
where it goes.
right. Well, I love that you're able to bring this kind of conversation to your students. What do you think it would take for us to have it be a standardized, you need to talk about your vicarious trauma, or even like best practice, when law enforcement shoot their gun,
Mhm.
they have to do certain parameters in order to get back, right? And doctors set certain schedules, emergency room, 2 days
Mhm.
on, 2 days
Yep.
off, like all these best practices. What would you want to see in the law industry as far as a best practice?
Well, we have something called CLEs, continuing legal education. Typically, most states, not all of them, but most of them require at least 1 hour of the 15 hours, 10 to 15 hours you have to do, be ethics. I think maybe one of them would be at least 1 hour of a year, to say, to review that yourself and make sure you're in a good position mentally with this,
Right. Yeah.
um,
No, that would be
that
great.
that would be something. Um, I- you know, I think it'd be hard to get mandatory hours, but I definitely think you stop not being afraid to establish boundaries and accepting that. If somebody says, "Look, I need this,"
Hmm.
well, how can you help me do that? I think most lawyers will do that. Like um, a lot of lawyers, we used to refer to ourselves as brother or sister or counselor because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. I mean, I know it does, but we're trying in the best moments we serve something
Right.
better. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so when we say that, my sister counsel or my brother counsel or my brother or sister, I generally mean it. I think most people, no, many people do.
Yeah.
And be out there. Don't be afraid to talk to somebody saying, hey,
Yeah.
if it's not a drink or hey, we want to grab a cup of coffee and
Yeah.
want to talk.
Right.
when you see
Right.
that, especially those young lawyers. Those first 5 years, let me tell you, it's a hard first 5 years out there when you're trying to establish yourself.
Right. And the support system are protective factors, right?
Yep.
One of the other things that comes up in my workshop when I was first working with Title IX individuals, they really steered away from like Law and Order SVU
Hmm.
because of the work that we do. It's like super triggering.
Hmm.
There's mixed emotions of frustration. Is there something that because of you being in this field for so long that you no longer find joy in, and you know that it might be in relation to your vicarious trauma?
It's a good question. I don't watch TV as much as I used to.
Yeah.
After law school, I stopped watching TV, and generally, I don't go to movies as much, and I used to enjoy that.
Yeah.
I think those and and for the record, I don't want to give the impression that I'm a full-time lawyer. I mean, I do. I'm
Mhm.
working in a higher ed setting, but when I did, and I took a few things. It just some things you see does affect you, and
Mhm.
TV shows just were one of them. I
You
didn't
could
enjoy them
see
anymore.
that, right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
yeah,
I'm glad to hear that you don't have one that you've like written off completely, but
yeah,
that maybe you just the hobby in itself, you have other uses of your time. I also see that you travel.
yes,
You're very cultured. And so those are things that I think is filling your box of joy, right? And so I talk a lot about how important that is. Um, and so sometimes TV doesn't give you that same kind of impact whatsoever. But on the idea of like advice,
hmm
I've been ending all of my sessions with like, what is one word or one phrase that you would want people to know that it would spill the beans for them today? Is there anything that you have that you can leave us with?
yeah. There's a word, a Japanese word. It doesn't really translate. It's called ganbate. It means keep fighting, don't give up. If you're thinking about Thai, my wife is Thai. And they have another word called susu. You keep fighting, right? And I think that's it. It's not necessarily in the aggressive sense. It's like it's not over till you give up.
Mm,
Believe in yourself. You deserve to be there. You're not going to be right all the time, but trust yourself. Keep working hard, and good things will happen. Um, I believe that. Don't with that note though, don't you can't work constantly. You can't. If you will look, you everyone breaks a certain point. Everyone has a breaking point. There's just no way around it. Finding that balance and knowing what your level is and sticking to that and not being afraid to say that. You know what I mean? That's where the confidence comes from. So
mhm.
ganbatte, everybody.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining today, Dan.
Thank you. I had a
Thank you
pleasure.
all. Thank you all for watching. I hope that this was helpful as we continue to peel back the different helping professions and the vicarious trauma that comes at the cost, but is a badge of honor. So thank you so much for watching today. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. Just coming back to reflect a little bit about my time with Dan just now, and specifically his expertise and as an educator and a lawyer. As you know, lawyers and the law profession in general is a helping profession and is exposed to a lot of vicarious trauma. So it's so important that we continue these conversations. Some of the things that I have learned through my tenure of working with individuals in the law field is the pressure for them to, as Dan mentioned, make their clients whole. And what does that mean? And also processing that when they have failures, what is that cost for that? So if you're going into a profession or you're a member of a profession where you already have a lot of pressure on achieving a certain goal, right? Like we need to win this case, or someone needs to make an arrest, or I have to judge correctly. There's no reason to also beat ourselves up, emotionally. And I think that when you use the protective factors and you constantly remind yourself that you are a human, that your job is not your whole identity, and that there's a job to do and you're going to do the best that you can, but also protect yourself in the process, that would give you the best outcome for your success. So it's kind of my takeaway with my time with Dan. I also find it interesting the intersections between the law profession and higher ed. It seems like even though there's a lot of autonomy that you might have to do your own hours and tracking them, the intensity of it all, whether you're a lawyer, a judge, in any type of field where there's timelines. Sometimes you don't always have that ability to take a deep breath and take a day off to reflect, right? And so I am not coming to you with like this naive sense that you have so much vacation time and just take it. What's the problem? But that's why I love Dan's suggestion of a mentor, because you might not be able to have that time off per se to hit the recharge, but just before my call with Dan was being recorded today for Spill the Beans, I was able to talk to him just candidly about my life and his life. And I'm honestly telling you, like, it put me in a better headspace just being able to talk to him. That's what I'm talking about when I say mentorship, right? Being able to tap into a friend, a colleague, someone that you haven't talked to in a while, that you can just pick up where you left off and not feel the need to give excuses of why you haven't been able to talk or justify what's going on. And it's not a tit for tat. It's everyone is very busy. Has a full plate. It's someone that authentically wants to check in with you and you want to check in with them. That's what I hope that you can find, because I think it will serve you in many ways than just one. So that's my reflections of talking with Dan. It was such a joy, and I hope you're having a great day. Bye now.